Hi, and welcome to this podcast. If you follow the last couple of podcasts in this series, you'll realise there's a theme. There's a theme. And the theme is about control, manipulation, bullying, which all has levels of understanding about control and manipulation. So I'm going to bring that to a kind of a conclusion theme, if you like, in the processes that we've had today and the last few weeks. When we look at control, we sometimes see it as a bad thing. We're all able to control. It's a feature of human beings. We all like to be in control. We all like to know that our reality is the right one, whatever that is. So when we're engaging with another person and they have a different reality, naturally, our perception is our reality, it's nobody else's, then we can say, well, we need to do this, that or the other because that's what we see as being the way that we should do what we do. When we're engaging with another person, they will have a different view of that quite naturally. It might be similar, but it won't be exactly the same. So they may have a different view. And when we're looking at that, what can happen in relationships, certainly primary relationships, partners, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, those kind of things, is that we can see our reality, our perception as being the way forward. So we lead, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. People who want control in their lives are not bad people. We all want it to a certain degree. So when we're utilising that process of how things should or should not be, and we take the lead, we take control, it's not necessarily bad. The person we're engaging with, if they believe that the way forward is different, then they would have an idea of what that should look like. And that's where we engage in kind of disruptions in relationships, because we both have different views of how it should be. Normally we don't have a conversation about that. Normally we don't have a shared process of understanding. So take, for example, a car driver. No, there's two car drivers. A friend, a colleague, a partner, a husband, wife, whoever. And you're both car drivers. Now the person who believes, their perception is that they're a better car driver, might always sit in the driver's seat. Without giving reference to the other person, would you like to drive, or, those kind of things. Now that person that's sitting in the driving seat is not a bad person. They're doing it because they believe they are the best person to do the job. But they don't give reference to the other person who might actually be better at doing the job than you, for whatever reason. So the person who sits in the passenger seat might initially feel as though they're being looked after, they're being cared for, they're looking after me, they're driving because I'm tired, they're driving because I don't know my way around, they're driving because... And that might happen for a number of years, sometimes. But eventually they may say, actually, I want to sit in the driver's seat because I've not driven for a while and I want to keep my skill of driving and I want to keep connected to driving. So why can't I drive? Now the person who was the original driver in control might say, okay, no problem, that's fine, you drive. And that would be the best way to work it. They might say, right, okay, no, I'm the better driver. I'm much better than you. You're not a good driver. That will create conflict. So I see the care and control as a line, basically. And we all move into control, as I've said. So if you see care on one end of the line on the left-hand side and control on the other end of the line on the right-hand side, then where we are on that line with that other person, we will never know. We don't know, I don't know as the driver whether I'm caring for that person in their eyes or whether I'm controlling them. Until I have that conversation, until I can have that conversation that says, are you okay with me driving today? Would you like to drive? Until we share that information, we'll never know where we are on that line. So we may feel as though we're caring. The other person may feel as we're controlling. Until we have a conversation, we can't know where we are. But most people don't have the conversation. Most people don't ask. They just assume, rightly or wrongly, that it is how the world is. And our perception, as I've said, is our reality. So I have a perception of the world. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from all that process that I've grown up with. All that information that's been given to me by parental figures, by people in authority, people I trust. I wasn't born with the world. I was born with the body. I wasn't born with the world. So I get the world. And that world is mine, pretty much. And so as I'm going through my world, my life, getting older, I create more and more understanding of the world by the information that's given to me that I trust. So my perception comes from all of that information. Today, now, here, I am a sum total of my 67 years on this earth. And that process means that I can have a perception of the world. I don't have a reality of the world. It's my reality, yes. But as soon as I engage with another party, another person, they will have their own perception and reality. And we then have to have a conversation. So I grew up in a situation, family, where the parental figure, the authority figure, if you like, was my dad. Now, my dad grew up with a process of not really having a father. I realise this now. I did not realise this till I started counselling. And we had lots of fights and disagreements before that. And after that, to be fair. So I grew up in a process where the authority figure was my dad, as I said. Now, he was a meat and two veg man. He was a staunch meat and two veg man. There is no other meal, main meal, than meat and two veg. And even breakfast was sausage, bacon, stuff. So I grew up in my former years of understanding that there is only one kind of food. Now, I grew up in a small town, not small anymore, unfortunately, but small town in East Yorkshire. So it was a bit kind of like, there was not much came into that town. We didn't have lots of people moving in and moving out. We pretty much knew a lot of people when I grew up. And as I'm growing up, meat and two veg is on the table. Now I get to 17, 18, and I'm out with my mates in the town having a few beers, unfortunately, 17, 18, and I kind of said, okay, finished beers, pub shut. In my day, pub shut 10:30, 11 o'clock. Yeah, I know it's a strange world, but pub shut 10:30, 11 o'clock. And my mates said, right, okay, feeling a bit hungry, had a few beers, yeah. And there was a Chinese restaurant that had opened up in town. Now, there'd never been a foreign food restaurant. Even pizzas had not been in Beverley before. This Chinese restaurant was the first different kind of food to hit this town. So they all said, well, we're going Chinese. I said, ooh, Chinese, what's that? Well, yeah, it's great, blah, blah, blah. Lovely food. And I said, I don't know, meat and two veg. So my perception is meat and two veg is the only food. So I don't want to be the odd one out. I want to go with my mates, and we go into this Chinese restaurant, and we sit down with this menu, and I could not make head and a tail of this menu. I didn't understand it at all. It had rice on. What's rice? What does rice look like? And so I'm kind of thinking, don't know what to do here. So I said to my mate, my closest mate, I said, what is all this? He said, don't worry, it's fine. And I said, what's that? And he said, he said, omelette, foo young. And I said, all right, okay, egg foo young, I'll have a bit of that. And he said, well, okay. I said, well, it's an omelette. I know an omelette. It's got meat in. I know an omelette. It's got eggs. I know an omelette. So I had egg foo young. So I'm eating this egg foo young and thinking, oh, this is nice, tasty, you know. All my other mates are having curries and all sorts of stuff, you know, chickens, wings and all sorts of stuff in weird combinations of sauces, which I didn't understand. So I had this egg foo young. I loved it. Absolutely fantastic. Enjoyed it so much, you know. So next day I went back, obviously home on the night, and the next day I gets up and, you know, Mum says to me, oh, what kind of night do you have? I said, oh, I had a great night. You know, Dad said, where do you go? I said, oh, I went to this pub and that pub that he knew. It's a small town. And he said, and so what do you do then? Because you didn't get in till late. And I said, oh, right, okay. So I said, I went to a Chinese restaurant. He said, whoa, Chinese restaurant? Oh, filthy stuff. And I went, well, actually, it was quite nice. He said, I said, well, I had foo young, it's like an omelette. You know, must be rubbish. I said, no, it was very nice. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I said, in fact, I enjoyed it so much, I'm going to go back again. Meat and two veg, meat and two veg. So I kind of like got a different reality because I'd experienced something different. So I come back to the family, the system. Meat and two veg is not the only food on the planet. And my dad was, oh no, meat and two veg, meat and two veg. So my perception changed. And now I eat food from all over the world. I love food. I love the different tastes and textures and stuff. But my dad was always a meat and two veg. He would never, ever, ever contemplate eating, even up until the day he passed away. He never had anything other than meat and two veg. So my perception has changed from my family's perception. And my dad really couldn't cope with that. He couldn't see anything other than meat and two veg. So his process of the world in 17 years had controlled what I ate. But I didn't know there was anything different. Now, he's not a bad person for doing that. He just is very entrenched in his own ways. And he likes the security of the world, knowing that there's only meat and two veg. So by engaging with that process, I have a different view. I have a different person and a different way of looking at it. And even though I've become different, my dad never changed. So he would never explore food with me in anything other than meat and two veg. But I'm exploring all sorts of food. But that doesn't change him. So now I can see that he wasn't trying to control me. He was just very insecure in his own world in a lot of ways. And that insecurity drove him to have to be a particular way, because that's the way the world worked. But I know now that that wasn't control. That was just his insecurity. But he couldn't change. So I either had to accept meat and two veg, which I did when I was with him and going for food with him. But I challenged that. Wouldn't change. So when I'm not with him, and sadly he's passed over now, then I can have whatever food I like. But if I'd had stayed within that system, that family of meat and two veg, then my kids might never experience foreign food. But I now like foreign food. I'm 17, 18. I become a father when I'm 26, 27. And there's a whole range of new experiences that I am having in order to create a new perception and a new reality for myself. In order to understand the care and control kind of timeline process, we have to see that the other person is not doing it to harm us necessarily. Now, they may be doing. I'm not saying it's always control because they don't understand what they're doing. There are people who will not change and will not change what they do, and their way of the world is the only way. They create conflict and abuse and all sorts of stuff. But we have to give that person opportunity to change. But if they don't change, then we have to then make a choice. And my choice was I prefer foreign food as well as meat and two veg. Still have meat and two veg sometimes. But I prefer a mixture of food. I prefer different food. I'm not going to sit with the same food every day. And his process, his world, couldn't change, unfortunately. So he missed an awful lot of opportunity. Until. It's a funny story. I took him out for a meal with the family and we went to a pub. And we're at this pub and we've got this menu, and this menu is meat and two veg. That's what he does, meat and two veg. But it's one of those menus that have pictures. So he was looking at this and had his meat and two veg for his main course, and he was looking for a pudding. So they bring the pudding menu with the pictures, and on the pictures was the menu for the whole thing, not just puddings. And he's looking at the dessert part of it, and he said, nothing I fancy, but on here there's pancakes. And I said, oh, is there? He said, yeah, here, there's pancakes. And it was in starters, bless him. He was getting a bit old in them days. And I said, they're not pancakes. No, they are pancakes. I can see pancakes. I'm having pancakes. So I said, okay, you have your pancakes. So the waiter came, and my dad said, well, I'll have some pancakes. And the waiter looked at him quite confused and said, pancakes? I said, yeah, these. I'll have these. Okay, you can have them, no problem. So the desserts arrived, and we've all got these desserts, and my dad gets his desserts on a plate, and the pancakes was 2 spring rolls. And he ate into these pancakes, which were a bit solid, not soft like they usually are, and all of a sudden he was eating bean sprouts. It's funny for me, probably not as funny for you. But at the end of the day, his process meant that even that, he wouldn't say it was wrong. He wouldn't say he'd made an error. He just said, yeah, these are nice pancakes. And he ate the pancakes. Which, obviously he'd eaten foreign food. So for him, even though he was eating foreign food, he wouldn't actually make that as a decision he'd made that was wrong. Bless him. His world was so encased with how life should be, and his very narrow vision of the world, that he didn't really experience much else, which is a shame, really, because that process meant that the family in the early days, until we left home, we found Chinese food, and all of us now eat all sorts of different food. But my mother at that point had to be in that world. So she made a choice not to eat anything else, and which is a shame because she would have loved different flavours, different textures, but couldn't do it. Did do it when she was around us, but mostly she wasn't. She was with my dad. So that process of having that very narrow vision of the world meant it wasn't able to be experienced in any other way, and wasn't able to share time with us in our experience of food and our experience of nutritious stuff. So his world was dictated by his restrictions, by his narrow focus, and that made it difficult sometimes, in other ways, not just with food, to have some kind of difference and diversity. But that process means that I engaged with him and saw that he wasn't a bad person for wanting to control the food intake of the family, but that he was just somebody who had a very insecure aspect of the outside world, sometimes food related and other ways, and he wasn't able to take on board that new ideas, new processes, which I say is a shame, really, because he wasn't able to extend that and widen that process. So when you see somebody controlling or seemingly controlling, then know that it's a process of their world being the way that world should be, how it has to be for them. But know that that control isn't necessarily because they're bad people. Have a conversation. Do you mind if I drive today? The driving scenario that I was talking about earlier. Do you mind if I kind of take the wheel? No, I don't mind. If you want to drive, you drive. That's somebody who can move, change, alter, adapt. If it's somebody who comes back and says, no, you're not driving, I'm driving, then you have to seriously look at those relationships and see one of the three options is available. Because if people will not change for whatever reason, we can't make them, unfortunately. We can't give those people an opportunity to adapt if they don't want to take it. So my perception is my reality, which is not wrong. Your perception is your reality, which again is not wrong. If we have a conversation between the two of us, then we'll find the reality, which is somewhere in the middle. But until we have that conversation in an open way, we will never know the reality. We will only see our reality. And means that restricts us in what we do and how we engage with other people. Diversity and difference is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic, and we should all be individuals. We should be all individuals. We shouldn't be sheep, you know. But there are some things that we need to adhere to. We need to have as part of our world, and that's for all sorts of reasons. But we can still retain our individuality. And the more we can be able to share that individuality with other people without feeling threatened, without feeling as though we aren't in control, the more we can expend and extend our knowledge, understanding, awareness, experiences. Because nothing is the only way to do anything. There isn't one way to do anything. There's numerous ways. Unless it's health and safety. If it's health and safety, then you have to follow the rules, because that's to keep you safe. But other than health and safety, there is many, many, many ways of looking at things. And sometimes in the counselling room, my job is to facilitate a process of being like an interpreter, being in the middle, seeing both worlds, both experiences, knowledge, whatever, is okay. We don't judge. And getting each person to see it from the other person's point of view, finding a middle ground, finding the reality, because each person will have their own reality about anything, really. So our job is to be an interpreter, is to see both sides, both realities, both perceptions, and kind of find something in the middle. Now, it won't be exactly the middle, obviously, but it'll be somewhere in the middle. We have to change one person's view to understand another person's view, and vice versa, so they can come with a shared understanding that they can take forward, and that is the reality. So when you look at control, don't look at it as a bad thing necessarily. If it's health and safety, it has to be there, obviously. But if it isn't, then have conversations, speak up, have a voice. If somebody won't allow you that voice, my dad wouldn't allow me the voice of any other food apart from meat and 2 veg, then you either have to allow it. His world is his world, so when I'm engaging with him, I have meat and 2 veg. Or I have to detach, because he wouldn't change. But that doesn't make him a bad person. It just means I have to make a choice and decision based on the fact that, I can't take him out for a Chinese meal. I can't share that process with him because he won't allow it. Hopefully that gave you some ideas. Hopefully it made sense. As always with any of these processes that I'm going through, any of these podcasts, if you have questions, ideas, things that you think might be helpful to have a look at, then please drop me an email and we can possibly build that into what I'm doing, because I want this to be helpful to everybody. I don't want it just me spouting about stuff, because it should be engaging with the people that's looking. So drop me a line, drop me ideas, and if I can put it in, because obviously we're on so much time, if I can put it into something, then I will do, and I'll share my ideas, my understanding, my knowledge with you. With that, my name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care. Look after yourselves. Enjoy.